Good evening and welcome to the event Martin Luther King Black History Month and in memory of the victims of the Holocaust, the topic which we should discuss hate, a phenomenon of the 21st century. My name is Ugoji Adanma Eze. I'd like to start by quoting Dr. Martin Luther King. I quote, "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Hate multiplies hate, violence multiplies violence, and toughness multiplies toughness in a descending spiral of destruction." End of hate. I'd like also to quote the current Secretary General of the United Nations on his statement on the 4th of February to the member states on his priorities for 2021. I quote, "Indeed, my call to action for human rights, the plan of action on hate speech, and the initiative to safeguard religious sites were all issued before COVID-19. Today, the pandemic has triggered a human rights crisis of its own. Hate speech has multiplied. I welcome today's new momentum in the global fight for racial justice. Racial inequality still permeates institution, social structure, and everyday life. We must all stand up against a surge of neo-Nazism and white supremacy. The United Nations will never veer from its commitment to fight racism and discrimination." End of quote. Today we should be discussing hate, which is indeed a new phenomenon of the 21st century, which is prevalent and being heightened by social media, hate speech, and the prevailing culture of hate. We'll verge onto the First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, social media, hate speech, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, xenophobia, and related tolerance. It now gives me great pleasure to hand across to my dear friend, Sami Stegman. I must commend you for the great and tremendous work that you do. Sami, the virtual floor is yours. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is a very important topic that we're going to talk about, hate. Before I'm going to talk about myself, what I would love to do is to tell you something about this virus that we are going through today. I live in Manhattan, alone, under the poverty line, in four, I would say, the practical purposes. Okay, I was on house arrest for almost 10 months. Yet at the same time, because of my positive outlook on life, which sustained me throughout my life, also sustained me and remain healthy during this period of time. However, there is one virus that is much more dangerous than COVID-19, and that is the virus of bullying, bigotry, anti-Semitism, hatred, and ideology. The only way that we can combat it, okay, is only through education. Unfortunately, I will tell you more about it, but the education in this country is very dismal. Half of the world population does not know that the Holocaust happened. 1/3 believe that it's a myth or exaggerated. And believe me, from my experience, okay, the young people, including Jewish students, are totally clueless. What's also very important, there are two things that I do not like in this country. By the way, I do not go into politics and I do not attack people. what's happening is people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. And the other thing, what it is, our leaders are not teaching the young generation the proper thing. And that is to take personal responsibility for what you did. Everybody here blames everybody else. Nobody is accountable. And that is against what I believe and what I teach the young people. I have spoken to close to 150,000 young people. And only in October of 2019, for the first time, to my shock, did I realize that even the Jewish college students that had families that went through the Holocaust have no clue about the background of the Holocaust. And that's something I want to talk. There is also a difference what happened in Europe, between Europe and Poland. The Holocaust, okay, did not start until January 20, 1942. And I also want to make a connection to the state of Israel, because the state of Israel is the only Jewish state in the world. And the Jewish young people have no connection, spiritual connection to Israel. And I'll just give you one example. During the Holocaust, Jews died because we did not have a country. In April 8th, we will have Memorial Day, Yom HaShoah. No, Yom HaShoah, it's another thing. But during the Memorial Day in Israel and all over the world for Jews, okay, we remember the people that died. So we do have a country. We have a place to go when things are difficult. And the most important thing what I want to talk is about using the proper words. The Holocaust did not happen suddenly. It evolved. And what is important for me, okay, is to talk not only about how it happened, but for me, the Holocaust is not a Jewish issue. It is a universal issue. 11 million people died. 6 million were Jews, but 5 million were non-Jewish people also. The other interesting thing is when I look here at 6 million, I don't know about you. For me, it's just a number. Okay, so let's bring it to a common denominator. If you would be on your feet and silent for 1 minute for every victim of the Holocaust, you would be on your feet and silent for 11 and a half years. That will give you a totally different perspective of 6 million. People confuse two things. They put genocide and Holocaust together. They are not. They are totally different things. Genocide is the murder of a group of people. Holocaust, on the other hand, is the annihilation of the group of people. In my personal opinion, okay, Holocaust is a unique moment in history. It will not happen again. There are leaders in this country that say that Holocaust is happening in the world. And that is a lie. There is no ethnic group today in the world slated to be completely annihilated from the face of the earth. Another thing that completely shocked me, in 2013, there were two articles in London and in New York that the Nazis and their collaborators had 42,500 different type of camps. Of all of these camps, only 6 were dead camps. Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Belzec, Sobibor, Chelmno, and Majdanek. Okay. Also, the thing that is very important for me to talk is about the difference between Poland and Europe. Poland was occupied, which means that the local governments had certain authority, okay, and control. I'm talking Europe. Poland, on the other hand, was annexed. And here in Germany, when the Nazis came to power, they did not want to murder the Jews. They wanted to have a Germany free of Jewish people. And they came out with the draconic laws, like the Nuremberg laws in 1935, when people lost their citizenship, teachers could not teach, children could not go to school, could not participate in sports. So a lot of people left. And by the beginning of the war in 1939, only 200,000 remained in Germany. They remained in Germany because a lot of the Jewish leaders told them this is the most enlightened country in the world. Nothing can happen. Cannot get any worse. And we all know what happened afterwards. However, Poland was annexed. And annexation means that it became part of the greater Germany. So in Germany, they did not want the Jews. And guess what? In Poland, they found 3.3 million Jews. What do you do with them? So the unofficial Holocaust started on June 22nd, 1942, when the Wehrmacht, the German military, attacked former Soviet Union, and behind them was a group called the Einsatzgruppen. And their job was to murder the Jews and also the Russians. The Russians were considered by the Germans subhumans. With the help of the local people, by bullets, the Nazis murdered 1.5 million Jews. Throughout the war, they murdered 1.5 million children. But officially, it started only on January 20, 1942. In a city which is today part of Berlin, Wannsee, 15 high-ranking Nazi criminals got together to decide the final solution to the Jewish question. Among them, there was one person. He was not one of the policymakers. He was one that he implemented it. And that was Adolf Eichmann. And I use Adolf Eichmann as an example of the efficiency of the Nazis, their collaborators, to murder in a very short period of time 11 million people. Adolf Eichmann, towards the end of the war in 1944, when everybody knew that Germany would lose it, he deported in only 2 months 437,000 Hungarian Jews to their deaths. Now, I want to mention something that probably very few people know, that you cannot, destroy a religion. You cannot destroy, for instance, a nationality. So the Nazis came out with a new term for the Jewish people. And they coined us as a race. And guess what? At the Wannsee conference, they came by each European country, they came out 11 million people. Once they were going to accomplish to annihilate all the Jewish people from Europe, they decided to open a museum. And they were going to call it the Museum of the Extinct Race. It's very important also to understand that words have consequences. The propaganda minister under Hitler, Joseph Goebbels, said something that we must remember. A lie told long enough becomes truth. And this is one of the important things that I want to talk about it, because we have to become upstanders, to stand up when somebody says a lie, because otherwise we will perpetuate false narratives. I gave you an example, putting together genocide and Holocaust. Another one is, for instance, somebody said that concentration camp exists in this country. That is another lie. There are no concentration camps in this country. If you want to make a comparison, you can make it a comparison to the DP camps, displaced people. These camps were run by the Allies. Life was not easy, but they were provided with food, clothing, and medical care. But the threat of death did not exist. And they lived under difficult conditions in the DP camps for 3 to 4 years because no country wanted to accept it. They had no place to go. As a matter of fact, you may be surprised, okay? There were only 3 countries that officially accepted Jewish refugees. Individuals saved Jews, but there were only 3 countries that officially accepted them. And that was China, Dominican Republic, and Philippines. And if you want, I can give you the numbers. So I do use the word concentration camp, but when I do that, I refer to the Uyghur people. And if somebody doesn't know who they are, by the way, I don't fight just anti-Semitism, I fight hatred. Anti-Semitism refers to one group of people, hatred refers to everybody. In no ethnic group, no human being should be persecuted, intimidated, or be hurt. Okay. I did not know anything about them, but I was asked to speak on their behalf in front of the UN in the national rally in Washington, D.C. As I did my research, I found out, okay, that in the former Soviet Union, if they did not want to be deported to Siberia, Jews went to the south, areas like Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan live Uyghur people. Their language is close to the Turkish one. These are Muslims, and they received the Jews with open arms. But in China live 15 million people, Uyghur. And about 2 years ago, they started deporting them. And I mean deporting them by force. Okay, they put them in so-called re-education camps. I lived in a communist country. Trust me, it has nothing to do with education. They are forced, they're used as slave laborers, they are also treated unkindly, with cruelty. They wanted to give up their heritage, their traditions, and to accept the Chinese culture. Apparently, they're just as stubborn as the Jews are. They don't want to do that. And the people that live in the United States and all over the world do not know the fate of the people that have been deported and are afraid to call their families in China because they may be deported. In the proper context, the word concentration camp is appropriate, and I use it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit, one more other comment before I'll tell you about myself. People put together 2 things: anti-Semitism and hatred. Again, we have to differentiate between the 2 of them. You can hate somebody because the way he or she looks. You can hate them because of the color of the skin. You can hate them because of the area where they came from, the country that they came from, for many, many reasons. Anti-Semitism is a unique form of hate. It's over 4,000 years old. And interestingly enough, there are 3 groups that are Semites: the Jews, the Arabs, and the Ethiopians. But when they use the word anti-Semitism, they use it only against the Jewish people. So we have to make a very strong distinction between these 2 types of hate. Before I'll talk about myself, I also want to talk about my parents. My father was an orphan of both of his parents. My grandfather died before he was born. Unable to take care of 8 children, my grandmother took the 2 youngest ones and decided to commit suicide. A stranger saved the children, but my grandmother did commit suicide. So my father grew up in an orphanage, and at age 13, he was thrown out on the street. He became a streetwise. It helped him during the war. It helped him after the war in Romania when there was not enough food, okay, to provide for the entire population. And he knew how to provide for the family. My mother, on the other hand, was an uneducated woman. She was abused by her stepmother. My grandfather had a store, but he did not allow her to go to school. She had to stay home and help provide for the family. But boy, did she have a heart of gold. And I took my confidence from my father, my sensitivity from my mother. I was born in December 21, 1939. I know of two other people that are younger than me, and both of them were born in a camp. One of them in 43, the other one born in January 1945. Both of us, okay, my mother and I were born in this area, Chernobyl, which is outside of Romania. My father, on the other hand, was born in Romania proper. In 1940, this area, which was part of Ukraine, was given to Romania. That's why we were deported by the Romanians and not by the Germans. We were transported in an area in Ukraine called Transnistria, and the name of the camp, labor camp, was Mogilev Podolsk. In 1946, the Romanians allowed a small group of Jews to return to Romania. My father, being an anti-communist, he decided to choose the lesser of two evils, and he came back to Romania, and for whatever reason, we settled in Transylvania. And that's where I grew up until 1961, when the whole family went to Israel. I served in the Israeli Air Force. In 1968, I came by myself to the United States without money, without the language. But interestingly enough, what I do want to say, when we were deported, I was only a year and a half. Most of the kids did not survive. If you will ask any survivor, how come you're alive today? Everyone will use only one word: luck. There is no rhyme, there is no reason why somebody lived, somebody died. My luck was that I was never separated from my parents. They did medical experiments on me. And later on, okay, when came a stage that I was dying of starvation, a German woman, and I want the young people not to learn not to stereotype. A German woman who had access to the camp decided at the risk of her family's life to give me milk. The reason that she had access to the camp is because not far away from the camp there was a farm owned by Germans. She brought food to the guards in the SS. I do not know her name. Obviously, I was not able to honor her. However, when I was in 2014 in Israel visiting the Holocaust Museum, Yad Vashem, next to it there is a garden honoring 27,000 non-Jewish people who saved Jews. They are called the righteous among the nations. And I was extremely happy to see a marker honoring the unknown righteous among the nation. So indirectly, the woman that saved my life, okay, has been honored. How much time do I have? Ugozi?
Could you try and cut a bit? Are you doing the presentation?
Okay.
Because I'd like to give the other people a chance to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, do the presentation, please.
Okay. So what happened is I started to speak for the first time in 2008. And for 63 years, I felt I don't belong to any group. I felt I don't belong to the Holocaust survivors because I have no memory of that period of time. And my parents did not talk about it. The other thing is I felt I don't belong to the children of the Holocaust survivors because most of them were born in the DP camps. However, in November 1st and November 2nd of 2003, the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. closed its doors to the general public for 2 days. They did this for about 15 years. Why in 2003 I decided to go there, I have no idea. Okay, meant to be. And there were over 8,000 people from all over the world. And at the table where I was sitting, I met a man born in the same city, been in the same camp, the same years, 1941, 1944. He was taken when I was 8 months old. I was taken when I was a year and a half. That is the difference between history and living history. And that prompted me to stop ignoring being a Holocaust survivor and do something about it. In 2007, I decided to join the Holocaust Museum here in New York. In 2008, March 11th, I got my first assignment to speak to 6th graders. All of you remember that your first presentation is not the best, it's not the most complete. I did not have a story. I did not know they can tell a story, and I had no idea what impact I would have on young people. Again, meant to be, they sent me thank you letters, each one better than the other. But one sixth grader changed my life forever. She wrote, P.S. Your story was overwhelming, and I promise I'll pass your story to my children. Because of her, I've decided to dedicate the rest of my life to reach as many young people as I can, nationally and internationally. Uh, as I said before, I'm not only a victim of the Holocaust, but I'm also a victim of persecution, intimidation, anti-Semitism after the war in Romania. I'm not only a survivor of the Holocaust, but I'm also a survivor of life challenges. And I tell the kids uh, only about two things, but I don't tell them for them to feel sorry for me, because what I want them to do is learning from me under no circumstances should they ever give up, should they ever lose hope. And when I tell them the two things that I will tell you also, I also tell them how I overcame it. So number one, at age 56, I became homeless. And like I told you before, I am one of the 1/3 of the Holocaust survivors in the United States that live under the poverty line. At the same time, I have a son, I have two grandchildren, and I'm unable to be in touch with them. So the homelessness I overcame by volunteering. And I used to volunteer for 18 different organizations because each organization gave me something that was missing in my life. And
Sammy, do you think you can start wrapping up, please?
Pardon me?
Could you try wrapping up a bit?
I don't know. What did you say?
Could you try wrapping up, please? So
Yes.
give the other people a chance to speak.
Yes, that here was what I want to do. And I'm saying basically what happened when I talk about overcoming the challenges and the obstacles, I became, okay, indirectly, I became a motivational speaker because I talk from the hard things that happened to me and not from the books. Okay, I will stop here, okay, and I'll allow everybody else to talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Sami. Iman.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, Iman.
Alaikum salam. Alaikum salam.
I'd like to ask you a question. We've spoken about anti-Semitism. We've seen the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, also globally.
Yes.
Hate crimes. Could you speak about Islamophobia, more particularly the recent attacks on the Muslim mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, and also the two shish bars in Hanoi in Germany? Could you speak about Islamophobia, the rise of Islamophobia globally?
Yes, thank you for having me. And I would like also to thank the previous speaker. Very touching, very moving. Thank you. As Sam mentioned that humanity needs education. This is very broad, statement, but I would add to that education that enlightens people's mind and heart to see each other as a brother and sister. As you started with the Martin Luther King's statements, these are very powerful, very, very, very effective words. So you cannot drive out the hate with hate or the darkness with darkness. Only light can do that, and only love can bring people together. Unfortunately, Islamophobia is on the rise, as well as anti-Semitism sentiment, and those people they create this atmosphere of hate amongst people. They are professionals. they don't do this just it happened that the people they start hating Muslims for the way they dress, for the way they talk, for the way they worship, and of course media on the other side, movies the other side. This circle gets together, so they try to portray Muslims that they are a threat, whether the way they talk, whether the way they think, whether the way they live. And this is absolutely has to do nothing with our religion. Unfortunately, when it comes to the dictatorship, probably you won't agree with me, but 90% of those dictators that they rule Islamic countries, they are Western countries' puppets. They are not elected. They are not being voted from their own people. They stay there in power till they die, and they are not accountable for nothing. So what happens is that very normal people here in US and other countries, they will see that as soon as they say Muslim countries, they will remember what? A dictatorship. A person who is not responsible or is not accountable for nothing. Another aspect is that yes, you would see some people that they speak. Usually they are giving platform to very extreme opinions. People that they first of all they would allow to be killing even Muslims, starting with, let alone any other groups. So like Zawahir, like Bin Laden, like these guys, like these are the ones that, for example, that they represent Islam and Muslims. These are the worst people that you can imagine. They hate everybody. And when it comes to real scholars, when it comes to real people, unfortunately, they don't have this platform. So this is what they use. They use the example of dictators. They use the example of those extremists. They use the example of, the hardship, and very, very, difficult economies that they are usually in some areas that Muslims they live. As a brother mentioned earlier, the issue of our Muslim brothers, Uyghur Muslims in China, except for United States, I haven't heard any other, probably Turkey, I don't know who else has even raised the voice to protect the Muslim Uyghurs, except for United States. Okay, and this hate towards Muslims and acceptance that whatever happens to them, they deserve because they are people that love blood and they love wars. Most of the wars are being conducted in the Muslim countries by Muslims. They are killing each other. So Muslims, they kill each other much more than anybody else can kill them. And as I said, sister, they use this mosaic of bad things that happens in the Muslim world and scare others. If you and here, for example, this new Congress lady that she was seeing, things that nobody can see. Sharia law. There is no Sharia law in the United States. Why are you trying to scare people that Muslims they are here? They're gonna Islamizate the country. We are so very tiny fraction of American Muslims. So we are a very small number. Yet they try to make this magnify that they're gonna eat you. Come on. So they can use, as they use, the other thing that I was wondering when the brother mentioned that, what is the reason why they hate only, for example, Jews? He said that there are Arabs or Semites in Ethiopia, but when we deal with the anti-Semitism, we deal only with the hatred towards Jews. Why? Now the same thing with the Muslims. Why they hate them? Majority of Muslim countries, they never launched a war against any other country. The whole thing has been launched against them. And now I wanted to just to connect a little bit with the Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and Albanian people. I'm Albanian Muslim, and I lead the largest Albanian Islamic Center here in New York City. We do have a small Holocaust museum in our mosque. We tell our people, and we tell American audience that in our mosque we have Holocaust survivors' pictures, the people they come and see. And this was a given gift to our center for the contribution that we did to enlightening people's mind what happened with the Jews during the Second World War. So pictures that they were taken for the American Jewish artist Norman Gershman in cooperation with Hebrew Union College in Manhattan. They have donated this set of pictures to be displayed in our mosque. As a result, as I said, the continuance job that we do as a center to educate our youth, but also, as I said, that the American public, which they come and visit those pictures. Albania, I don't know why Albania was not mentioned amongst those three nations, China and he mentioned other somewhere in Latin America, but Albania was the only country in Europe that have welcomed Jews. Even the United States, some very emblematic figures that they came in the United States, like Albert Einstein, he came in the United States with Albanian passport. King of the Albania then, 1939, has given instructions to all diplomatic, embassies, presence of Albania in the world, especially in the Western world. Whoever is a Jew who wants to come to Albania, he's welcome. Yes, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia is on rise, but unfortunately, it's not too much noise. It's not too much response. Here in the United States, we do. In the previous meeting the Zoom conference that we had with Rabbi Ptasnik and others, we do. We come together, we condemn, we march together, we do this. But unfortunately, on the stage, international stage, is not yet, the reaction towards events in Europe or elsewhere. It doesn't have that much of the impact. I would love to have this platform international. I would very much encourage you, Dr. Oji, to organize another, probably a bigger, platform, and we have the international leaders that yes, we will stand against anti-Semitism, we'll stand against Islamophobia, we'll stand against any hate, racism, because in the end, as a family, human family, we suffer. Anybody anywhere suffers, we will feel that, because in the end we are humans. We didn't choose to be humans. We are created in such a way. So even if you try to get to another, set of principles, that will hurt us too. So unless we educate our minds that we have to live by some set of principles that does not distinguish between a race and a gender and age and the areas that you come from. I would be honored to continue more in our conversation, but I really appreciate your leadership and looking forward to have more discussions to make this place of ours that we live a better place for our young generation that they come.
Thank you very much, Iman. Thank you very much. Reverend Jones.
Yes,
Hello, Reverend Jones. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Thank you very much. It's good to see you. I'd like to talk to you, put to you one or two questions to you, more particularly as regards the emergence of racism in the United States, more particularly towards the people of color. And there's another observation I made when I was researching for this event, is the fact that there were a lot of Black people who were persecuted, who died during the Holocaust. And this is a part of history which has been so conveniently neglected and left out of the history book. Black people were also victimized during the Nazi regime. They were actually caught up in German occupied Europe during the Second World War. they were actually imprisoned. And this is a part of the history which I'm surprised has actually been left out when one discusses the Holocaust and what's happened. Would you like to comment on that, and also racism in the United States towards African Americans, and more particularly in the current climate of the right-wing extremists?
Yes, Dr. Oaks, thank you for hosting this, and to all of my fellow panelists and colleagues, meet you. My name is Pastor Joseph Jones. I'm the faith-based liaison for the Commission on Human Rights here in the city of New York, the agency that has been tasked with two specific duties as far as the New York City Charter alleged and states. One is to educate as many people as possible on their human rights according to the laws of the city of New York, in reference to discriminatory practices, prejudice, racist behavior. While we are not a criminal organization or affiliate to any type of criminality, we do have powers of civil authority and civil suits where persons who have been found to commit these egregious acts will be subject to severe penalties and fines from our organization. So I am a servant of every person on this call, that anytime you need someone to explain your rights, especially in the area of housing and jobs and public accommodations and behavior that is in your eyes considered prejudicial or discriminatory, you're more than welcome to contact our agency. And what I love about our agency, Dr. Ugoji, is that even if we're not the direct agency to handle that issue, we will not say it's not ours, have a good day. We will find someone to address your situation. You will not be left without a resource. When I started my work, working with the district attorney's office for over 34 years, I adopted a slogan that if I can't find it, I'm going to look for it. If I really can't find it, then I'm going to create it. If I can't create it, then I'm a real preacher. I'm gonna pray for it. One way or the other, we're gonna get what needs done, done. I don't think anybody on this call is unaware of the attack on people of color. It does not surprise me that that part of the story of the Holocaust was left out of all of the Africans and people of color that was murdered during that time. There are plenty of unsung stories and unsung heroes of that time of color that were not given the props. As Mr. Stegman mentioned, the German persons that were able to help in that time of struggle, that they were able to get some type of recognition. Many people of color helped at those times, and they'll probably never get the recognition they deserve. And unfortunately, that's a bitter pill for the people of color to have to accept, that our story is unfortunately often swept under the rug. It's often pushed aside, it's often negated and ignored. But we are people of survivorship. If we all had to agree on one thing, and I seek for unity and equitable understanding of finding more reason to join us together rather than to separate us, is that we've all suffered. We all suffer from the issue of anti-Semitism. We all suffer from the issue of hate and racism and discriminatory practice. We've got to get back to treating people as humans. Let people love who they love. Let people worship who they worship. If I'm not a part of that, if I'm not in agreement with that, that's my choice, but I can choose not to be disagreeable or disrespectful. I invite any one of these speakers. My reach in the faith community is 35 years long. The story that Mr. Stegman has mentioned, and definitely the imam that I did meet in Staten Island. I don't know if he remembers or not, but I met him some years ago in Staten Island.
Yes, but I need your contact number, bro.
Yes, sir. You can have it, sir. You can have
Please.
it, because the story that you're telling and the story that Mr. Stegman's telling me, I promise you, most of the Christian people do not hear it, and they don't know it from this perspective. They don't understand it.
I wanted to thank once again Dr. Ugozi. She is amazing. God bless
Yes,
you.
yes.
And more we have these, platforms where we can talk. I know a lot about, Holocaust, having in mind that I've been, a panelist for quite a long time. But tonight was the first time I have somebody speak from the heart in terms of what he has already experienced.
Right.
So we need to hear this more.
We need to hear this. I speak to 15 to 16 clergy groups every month as a part of my job and as a part of my work. I have a database of well over 1,700 faith leaders, and I promise you, Mr. Sammy, they don't know you even exist, and that's sad. And they should.
Well, okay.
That's sad.
God is big. Okay, so I hope
So you got to keep living, Mr. Sammy.
I hope
You got to keep talking
because the world needs to know.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that's very important. Okay, like I said before, people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. We have to have a dialogue.
Yes, sir.
Not only among ourselves, we have to have, because we are one group of people. And we may not agree on everything. We don't have to agree on everything.
Right.
But with a dialogue, without using slogans and without, using emotion, we can achieve certain agreements. But when you use emotion and slogans, this is basically confrontational and nothing good comes out of it.
Never.
And I agree, we need more of these things, and not only, in my case, not only with Jewish people, but we have to do it with everybody else.
Right.
Something may happen. You may not agree with me, but we may find something in common.
Right, because the reality is I need you. You need me. I don't even know, most people don't even know when they're being disrespectful to the Jewish community. They're not adept at all the rules and regs and things of your faith, your culture, and whatnot. And the same thing on my side. Until we learn each other, that's why recently I started a group called, co-founder called Racial Reconciliation Roundtable, where we brought white clergy with Black clergy and said, how come we don't work together? We claim to believe in that there's a God, but we don't even cross the street to shake hands. I don't understand. I don't get it.
Esther, I want to say something. Okay, we're talking about MLK. Okay, the Jewish group people were the first one that marched with them.
Yes, sir.
What I like about MLK is that he accomplished what he accomplished in a non-violent way. Why do we have right now, this the difference between the Black people and the Jewish people? I don't get it.
I don't get it, sir.
No reason for it.
It makes no reason. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And that's the thing we're trying to fight with: dialogue, conversation, getting to know one another, getting to be friendly with each other, to recognize our unity more than our disunity. And the same thing with our Islam brothers, same thing with our Catholic brothers and sisters. It just befuddles my mind. I don't get it. And we all got the same problem. I'm pretty sure the imam has people that are suffering with housing issues. I'm pretty sure you Jewish people are suffering from issues with finance and job. I'm pretty sure that all of us are dealing with disrespect and discrimination, yet we don't have this type of unification to say, how do we get together to fight it? Dr. King did it all the time. And he did it with nonviolence. He did it with getting involved with political issues. There are certain laws and rules. My work in the DA's office, I can't tell you how much it's just bad. It was so bad there. The things they did that were illegal against humane issues, knowing that the defendant was innocent, but prosecuting them anyway for the sake of numbers. Knowing that there was a law on the books that was older than time itself, but you were going to hold it up in court just to put somebody in prison for 15, 20 years. The laws have to be changed. The rules have to be changed. The structure has to be changed. This is what our lobbying together will do when it comes to government. Racism is for people of color is still going on. I said, you said something that was very powerful. You said that the extermination of the Jews the Jewish people were the only people that were considered to be exterminated off the face of the earth. Well, if that's true, sir, the black people are running a close second because they've been trying to get rid of us for years. They've been coming after us for years. They've been coming after Muslim people for years. They just seem to find some reason thinking that we're going somewhere. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. And you might as well figure out a way to live with us and work with us so that we all can have harmony and unity. It's just the craziest thing I've seen on the planet. I mean, there's such rich culture in every one of us. I would rather dig to find that.
If I may, as you mentioned that they were trying to get rid of us for quite a long time. I was raised in the former Yugoslavia, the communist regime. So we have in common with Sammy about that. I know what it is to live in communism regime. So as a little child, I remember The Roots, the movie.
Yes, sir.
The film. Yeah, The Roots, Kunta Kinte. I swear to God, we used to play our kids.
Yes, sir.
So the brave ones, we were fighting with each other. Who is going to play the role of Kunta Kinte?
Right.
Right. And running. So,
and you know what, Iman, Dr. Goji, you don't know this, and my grandfather was murdered by the KKK. My grandmother and my grandfather had 14 children in Virginia, 10 boys and 4 girls. And my father, on my father's birthday, my grandfather went to work at a rock shell company. A fight broke out between the whites and the blacks, and he got involved to break it up, and somebody hit him over the head with a pickaxe and then threw his body on the tracks where they moved the rocks from the mountain into the trucks, and they allowed the carts to roll over his body to cut his body up. They found pieces of his body weeks after still in the area where they was doing the work. When they came to the house, the head of the KKK of that area was the sheriff that came to tell my grandmother that he had an accident and died. And my father was about 10 years old when he died on his birthday. He was expecting his father to come home and bring him a bag of nuts and hard candy. That was the gift they got back then in 1941, 42 for their birthday. And he never came home that day. The day that he was buried, they didn't do embalming back then, Dr. Easy. They just put him in a box and did the burial. And while in the little small wooden church on the side of the road, and the people packed the place out because my grandfather was well known in the community. My father says that he didn't hear the preacher, he didn't hear the choir, he didn't hear the singing. He just watched his father's blood drip from the casket during the entire service. And that church is still standing today. And if you go there and pull back the carpet, the wood that's still there still has the stain of my grandfather's blood. Now, I can tell you that story in such detail because every August 22nd, which is my father's birthday, he'll be 80 this year, he calls me at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, not for me to wish him happy birthday, but to keep telling me that story because he still hasn't healed from it, from the hurt that he got from somebody that was white and hated him and hated the color of his skin. Now, I say that because his 5 children, my 3 brothers and 2 sisters, we should have been raised to hate white people. We should have been raised to hate people like Sammy, hate Professor Asher, hate Brother Kenneth. We should be able to hate them because of what they did to our family. It almost destroyed our family. He was the breadwinner. If it wasn't for my uncles and a few good neighbors, my grandmother would have been destitute. She didn't know how to run a farm of that size and keep things going. She had 10 boys. All of them were ready to tear that town all to pieces, but somehow or another, she was able to pull them together. We have a lawyer in the family. We have several preachers in the family. And I wasn't raised to hate. I wasn't raised to dislike people of color. It was a Jewish woman by the name of Sylvia Gerber who gave me my first job at the Kings County District Attorney's Office at 17 years of age. How could I hate a Jewish person? She gave me a chance. No paperwork, no proof, no documentation or nothing. She just looked at me and said, you would work here well. And because of what she decided to do, I got a career of 34 years working in a place where I became the first Black clergy in the United States of America to be a clergy liaison out of the DA's office. No other district attorney in the country had a Black preacher working to bring unity between the district attorney's office and faith leaders. So I wasn't raised to see all of that. So it's not something that can't be done. Sammy has it right. And I don't mean to disrespect you, Sammy. I hope you don't mind me calling you Sammy, but you got it right. If we talk to these kids, get to these college students, and raise up an army of millennials and Generation Zs that can hear these stories and understand that it's not about hating me because of my belief in my faith. It's about finding the unity in me that we can work together to stamp out racism, stamp out prejudice, stamp out disrespect because of the color of my skin. I was learning how to swim, and I'm gonna finish with this, Dr. E. I was learning how to swim. I was learning how to swim, and I didn't really know, and I slipped and I almost drowned. And a white guy jumped in and pulled me out the water and helped me and didn't let me drown. And one of my friends was like, you let that white guy save you? And I said, fool, I was drowning. I didn't care who saved me. I didn't care what color he was. Just somebody had to save me. Does it really matter what color we are? Does it really matter what faith we are? Right now, America needs saving, and we've got to pull together to do it.
Thank you very much, Pastor Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you ready for me?
Yes, you're right in a minute. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce Mr. Kenneth Abramovich, New York bestsellers book, The Multi-Front War. Ken, the virtual floor is yours. Thank you for coming today.
And thank you very much for hosting this event. And what I want to do is give a 3-minute background of the history of hate for the last thousands of years. Human beings are inherently hateful. Human beings traditionally have been managed by dictatorships, if you go back thousands of years. And dictatorships have no minority rights, no constitution, no rule of law. And the dictators allow no diversity, and anyone who opposes a dictator is hated. So hate is actually, I mean, we're all wondering why there's so much hate. That's not the question. Human beings are inherently hateful and have been since the beginning of human beings. The question is, how can the government, and in particular democracies, change the inherent hatefulness of humans? Well, it began 3,800 years ago. Western civilization began 3,800 years ago with Abraham, the early Jews, then followed by the Greeks, the Romans, and then Jesus, 2,000 years ago. And together, the Jews, using some of the democratic ideals of the Greeks and Romans, and then the Christians, created Western civilization, which is a code name for democracy. In democracy, we have minority rights. We agree to disagree with people, and instead of hating them, we just agree to disagree, and everyone goes on their way. Then, about 250 years ago, our founding fathers created, well, first there was the Magna Carta in 1215. Then there was the Reformation of Christianity in the 1500s. And then 250 years ago, we had the Constitutional Bill of Rights, where the founding fathers said that the function of government is to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for 100% of the people. However, the words were nicer than the deeds because we still had slavery at that time. And then we had a civil war in 1861 to 65 with the Democrats. We called them Confederates at the time. But the Democrats declared war against the Republicans. The Republicans believed in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They believed in a colorblind society. But the Democrats, Confederates didn't. We had a war. The good guys won and the bad guys lost. And then we made continuous progress through the help of the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King. And then we come to where we are today, which until recently was basically a colorblind society. We fixed many, it took 3,800 years, but we fixed many of the problems of democracy. And we created the most powerful country, the best country, the most free country in the world. And then we hit a roadblock. And now we're being attacked by the communists and socialists. I call them the Reds. That's traditional color for communists, which make up about a third of the Democrat Party. So the Confederates are back again, trying to take us back into the past. We're also fighting Islamists, not Islam, Islamists. These would be countries that use Islam as a political weapon. That would be Iran, Turkey, Qatar, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. By the way, the number one victim of Islamists are Muslims, as Adam, my new friend Adam mentioned. So the question is, can we keep making progress, or are we going to slide back 3,800 years? Are the Reds, the totalitarian Reds and totalitarian Islamists, and the progressives, who I call regressives because they want to take us back into time, are they going to make us racist again and disregard the rights of the minority? And that's where we are today. I would say 99% of the racism and intolerance is on the left. The right wing is very small. It has no standing in the Republican Party, whereas in the Democrat Party, the third of the Democratic Party is communists and socialists. So that's the dilemma we face today. Are we going to move forward? We're going to move back. And right now, there's a stalemate. There's a tug of war. And I wish I could tell you someone was winning or losing, but it's a tug of war, and it's a battle for the soul of the country, of whether the Confederates will rise again and take over or not. And I wish I had an easy answer, but I always come back. I'll just conclude that I'm a big believer, like the founding fathers, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is a goal for 100% of the population. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you look like. The government is responsible for protecting your unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I use that as a measure to determine good versus evil. If someone believes in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and acts that way, they're good. If someone tries to destroy life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness or acts that way, they're evil. And that's the dilemma that I see today. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thanks very much, Mr. Abramovich. It now gives me a great pleasure to hand across to Professor Asher Matthias. Professor, the floor is yours.
Matthias, yes.
Mother
I'm delighted
Teresa.
that, this could be a seminar. What Kenneth Abramovich opened up, of course, is a can of worms, if I may say so. It reminds me, by way of an introduction, my only meeting with Malcolm X. In 1963, I was an undergraduate in Brooklyn, and we had on Thursdays a club day. The classes were suspended, and we would invite prominent speakers. Since this was predominantly white in those days university, even though it was in the middle of Brooklyn, I figure I can wait until I arrive to the room. I go in, and it was packed to the limit. I, being shy and very few words, as you can tell, I approached the podium, and I literally sat at the foot of this giant man, Malcolm X, who began in 1963, was still haranguing, of course, the whites, and even predicting perhaps something even more dire. At the end of the question, at the end of his talk, I raised my hand. He said, "Yes, young man." I said, "Mr. X, I'm recently a recent immigrant who just turned, who became a citizen. You have, pardon the expression, you have painted a very dark picture of our common future. Is this what we expect? A future race war here?" Uh, I could tell immediately that he was taken aback because he expected tit for tat, an attack on him. Uh, Instead, he very pensively looked at me and said, "Young man, maybe you're right." And this is something that haunts me to this day. Very prophetically, he said, "We may go on to have a better country, but I will not be around." Can you imagine this? I don't think I will see that future. 2 years later, of course, he goes to Mecca, and he has an epiphany. He looks to the right in the mosque, and he sees a white man. He looks to the left, and he sees a brown man. He said, "These are not my enemies. These are my brothers." And he returns on TWA to JFK to declare that he was breaking with Elijah Muhammad, and starting his own mass. Of course, he was also writing his execution. Uh, that's not. I am very optimistic about America. And I will mention this because I will cover everything that you have said and tie it into a nice, I think, package for you. But before I do that, I want you to know Asher J. Matt, M-A-T, at AOL. I beg you, please contact me to send you some links to my story as well. I want to absolutely hail the host and the producer of this wonderful program, Dr. Ugochi Adamna Eji, who I know for years, and we worked together in human rights advocacy in the United Nations with Mr. Lauder of the World Jewish Congress. And I did not know that she's also, as if she did not have enough with xenophobia and racism and anti-Semitism, she takes on the world. She wants to make it a better world. She is the CEO of One World, is it? What is it? What is it called?
Fractured World, Renew Earth.
Yes, yes, fantastic. I also hail my panelists, my fellow panelists. The Imam, of course, reminds me that I was a chaplain for the Jewish Prisoner Services International, serving the few Jews who were incarcerated in the Nassau and county jails in New York City. And of course, I salute my fellow Holocaust survivor who told us about a woman who helped, a German woman who made him survive through giving him milk, mama's milk. the Aryan race was Aryan race was perpetrating history's most heinous crime. I have a very unique story, and I will also refer to Martin Luther King in this, without following a linear narrative, except to state that there have been Jews in Greece. I'm a Greek Jew. Before there was even a Greece, before now they're celebrating the 200th anniversary. Even before Christianity, there were Jews in what is today Greece. In fact, it was where Paul, the future apostle Paul, who was the apostate Jew Saul, who came to Salonica, to preach to the Jews the good news. They listened to him silently, and then they ran him out of town, making him the archetypical anti-Semite ever since. Greek Orthodoxy, Russian Orthodoxy, and Ukrainian have imbued the world's oldest social disease, which is anti-Semitism. For example, the Catholics 65 years ago in the 60s expunged the deicide, the guilt of the Jews for the crucifixion. The Greek Orthodox Church still teaches that. So how can we have a dialogue when they see me as a murderer, conceivably? At any rate, our family is a composite of the Romagnot, the Greek-speaking Jews, and the Sephardim. The Sephardim came from Spain in 1492, and they settled. They were warmly welcomed by the Ottoman Turks, and they settled in Salonika, making it the Madre of the Balkans, the mother of the Balkans of Jerusalem. Now, fast forward, in 1941, there was a romance brewing between a Sephardic woman named Nina Atun and a Romagnot Greek Jew named Jacob. Well, they married, and it was a good thing because he took her away from Salonika just as the roundup was taking place, where 87% of the Jews perished in Auschwitz and Birkenau, with only 1,200 returning. And of the 60,000 or so, of those 1,200, upon returning, you would think that there would be compassion, there would be empathy, there would be sympathy for them. The non-Jewish Greeks looked at them and said, "Why did you come back? Why didn't Hitler finish the job?" So much for philotimo. Philotimo is the sense of decency and Christian love. In Volos, where my parents were living, they had a close friendship with a childless couple named Froso and Yorgo Stamos. I'm trying to get them right now to be named as righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem. What did they do? Out of risk to their own lives, they took my parents and hid them in the mountains. So when the Germans came to Volos and they ordered everybody to line up in the platea, in the square, they found only the elderly and the sick. And because most had run away and under the collaboration of very unusual circumstances. A metropolitan, Joachim, the chief rabbi of Volos, named Moshe Pesach, who is buried in the Mount of Olives now in Israel, and of all unlikely heroes, the Consul General of Germany, Helmut Scheffel. You know, until 12 years old, when I came to America in 1956, I used to pass that street and nobody ever told me Why was he named Scheffel? Scheffel was named in honor of this German who said, I'm going to let you know what my government has in store for you Jews. Get out of there, get out. Anyway, I was born December 3rd, 1943, in the mountains, in a cave. Therefore, the sobriquet, they call me the caveman because of that. So when the Germans started to comb the countryside, they found many Greek Jews hiding because they were betrayed by their children. There were other young children. My late mother, before dying 4 years ago, at the age of 96, she would turn to me and say, you know, Asher, you are my hero. I said, what are you talking about, Mom? What hero? I was a child. I did not do anything. I was a baby. You were our hero. You made us survive because you kept quiet as the German patrols passed. Now there came a time when a German patrol discovered us. During the daylight hours, my father would be in the underground doing whatever he could to resist. So you could just picture the nativity scene, mother and child. Anything could have happened with the patrol there, with the German soldier. Instead, as he passed by to investigate, he glanced at the baby. I must have been a beautiful baby. Look at me now. And smiled. Always a good sign. And that smile, he said, motioning, I left a baby like this back in Hamburg. The next word out of his mouth was, Raus! Never out, never to bother us again. Can you imagine? It was Erev Hanukkah. It was a miracle, a Hanukkah miracle. I am called a Hanukkah miracle. All right. Let me go. At the head of this, so I mentioned that I have numbers in my mind that haunt me. The good Imam mentioned that all 200 Jews of Albania survived. Why? Because of the application of Besa. Besa is the equivalent of Philotimo, a kind of decency, a kind of feeling that all of us are together. We are one nation, Muslims and Jews. And they felt that. We never felt this. In all my years living in Greece, those young years, we were always, and to this day, considered the other. 95% of Denmark Jews survived. Why? Because they were part of Denmark. The king of Denmark used to ride around on a horse with the Magen David, the Jewish star, on his heart. That's the kind of identity that makes me cry. Even in Italy, he was an Axis partner, yet the Italian Jews in the main survived. There were Jews who survived by going to India, to China, the Philippines. Can you imagine? But yet, to my eternal, hurtful, historical drama, our own United States turned Jews back. We are a schizophrenic nation. On the one hand, we welcome immigrants, we welcome asylum seekers, we welcome refugees, and we were all of that. At the other hand, we damn them, we hate them, we say they smell, they will remake the United States. I came to a country with 89% white in 1956. The whites today are 53%. And guess what? When I turn 99 in the year 2042, the whites will be a glorious minority like everybody else. The nation of immigrants, the nation truly that is fantastic. Okay, let me go on. There is a problem that we are dealing with. In 1947, just 2 years after the Holocaust, there was a United Nations General Assembly resolution to debate, 181. And what was that? What to do with Palestine. And they came to a Solomonic decision. Let there be a half Jewish, a half Arab. The Jews who have been persecuted for 2,000 years immediately said yes. 33 nations endorsed the idea. 10 nations abstained. 13 nations said no, mainly Arab and Muslim. One nation. Can you guess which nation is that? One nation, European and Christian, also said no. Which nation? My home native land, Greece. Ever since, in the last 3 years, I've been trying, and we have circulated a petition. It's called Petition of Conscience. Appeal to correct history and to heal hearts. And what does it ask?
Professor, do you think you could start wrapping up, please? Could you start wrapping up, please?
With signatures saying that we want Greece to recant, just like the United States did with the Japanese Americans, another shameful, very shameful part of history, and to apologize to Israel and the Jewish people entire. Martin Luther King Jr. was fully aware of the convergence between Jewish history and Black history. It was already mentioned that Rabbi Joshua Heschel walked along with the Archbishop Iakovos and other religious leaders with Martin Luther King in Selma, Alabama. The Jews played a key role at the yet to be fully realized Second Reconstruction that began with the return of Black GIs from the battles of war for freedom abroad into their Jim Crow existence in this land. Can you imagine? They came back to a segregated America. I can remember vividly, I was a teenager. I remember Emmett Till. I remember Rosa Parks. I remember Medgar Evers, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, are historic figures that have shaped my character. Others reflective of the tumultuous decade of the 1960s were JFK, Malcolm X, MLK, RFK, and Hubert Humphrey, in the recreation of a protracted conversation that is made up by the cinematographer. It takes place one night in Miami. I want you to see that. I saw it and I cried. 4 people were supposedly in a room. It never really happened, but it is what the producer thinks might have happened among Jim Brown, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and Sam Cooke, the famous singer. How glorious I think of it would have been had they not been cut down at a young age, had they survived. And in 1968, instead of giving us Nixon, we had Humphrey as president. The future of America would have been a lot better. We are today living through another fraught historic event. Unlike Mr. Abramovich, I am very optimistic. It is the greatest time. The trial following a second impeachment of an aberrant, this was a terrible 45th president, the denouement of a 4-year at the
Professor
top of the
Matsovitz, do you think you
political
can start wrapping up, please? Could you start
It's
wrapping up,
still
please?
a
Could you start
trial
wrapping up,
of
please,
atrocious
Professor?
developments
Could you start
that
wrapping up, please?
Reverend Martin Luther King would have agreed. For example, the Charlottesville Jews would not replace us. The second was the caging. Who ever heard of caging children and separating mothers from their kids in the Southwest? And of course, what is proud about Proud Boys to be insurrectionists? America is and this how I conclude, is an idea in constant evolution, expanding the horizons of its citizens, unafraid and courageously. We, the nation of immigrants, must learn the inherent genius of our country, reinventing itself by the newcomers and this unique demographic, as I mentioned. So let me conclude by saying, with Satsmo, it's a beautiful world. Oh yeah! Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Asher. Thank you very much.
I love it. I love it.
I'd like to
please contact me. I'd like to speak to your groups.
Professor, please, could I round up, please? Could I round up, please? Could you mute yourself?
Mute myself, yes.
Yes, thank you, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this lively discussion. Some of us got carried away. If I could make some concluding remarks. Today, globally, we're immersed in a debate over religious freedom, both in the United States and all over the world, which is connected in its own way to debates over 2 centuries ago. From Bradford to Jones, from Lincoln to King, from Paine to Obama, from DeMille to Superman, from Tubman to Bush, from Franklin to the architects of the Capitol. These Americans show us what the authors of the Haggadah meant when they said that the Exodus story is a reason that we are not subservient to Pharaoh today. The Exodus story indeed has given us the language, the vision, the direction, and the moral ambition to resist any Pharaoh and to construct a glorious alternative to him. It is a question that has been asked by school children and philosophers, by politicians and artists, by soldiers and clergymen. What is America? The answer is very clear. American history is indeed an exercise in reliving and retelling the story of the Exodus. The United States of America is simply the greatest Seder ever conducted. I'd like to conclude by saying a few words from a poem I actually heard at Touro College a few years ago during a Holocaust memorial ceremony. I quote, "Who am I to speak of a time of families crushed, of crimes of mankind, of children in hiding and living in fear, of mothers telling to hide all their tears, of fathers praying to an empty heaven, of people dying again and again? Who am I to know what it was like to be persecuted by day and trapped by night, to be surrounded by a world turned upside down, to be starved and tortured and beaten to the ground, to witness a nation of hate marching past, to see all their dreams broken and shattered like glass? Who am I to mention their suffering and pain, the ghettos, the camps, life and death inhumane? I wasn't even born. I wasn't even there. It happened long ago. It could never happen here. Who am I to know what God had in mind when the virtues of men were burned alive? When good lost to evil and hope turned to despair, when hell upon earth seemed everywhere? Who am I to let their memories be forgotten, to say and do nothing as if it never happened, to forsake the loss of our Jewish family, to live in a world of complacency? end of the program. I'd like us now to remember the victims of the Holocaust, to remember also victims who have been persecuted all over the world, both Christians and both Muslims. As we recently celebrated the commemoration of the Holocaust, let us say, and we keep on saying it again, never again. Good evening and thank you so much for participating tonight. God bless you all and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.